last time. Make it on the hour. For those of you who are new, we always keep these to 60 minutes. We start on the hour, finish on the hour. I have a special guest today who I'll introduce very, very soon. A couple of quick announcements though. If you've not been to one of these sessions before, then please, if you have any questions whatsoever, just ask. Just ask via the chat box wherever you are, whether it's LinkedIn, YouTube, whether it's Facebook. When you ask a question, please put 2 capital Q's in front of it. Someone might help me out at this point. Put 2 capital Q's in front, just because there's lots of comments happen, and it just helps me to see if there's a question rather than a comment, because comments are coming in all the time. Like, for example, Michelle over on LinkedIn. Hi there, Michelle from North Carolina. We have Julie here from Hampshire. Christine Ware is here. Sarah, thank you. Sarah, my partner. That's what you want to do if it's a question. Just put 2 capital Q's in. It just helps it to jump out. And we'll answer questions throughout the session. So please, if you have a question for me, if you have a question for Peter, please ask. Okay, that's questions. Other things, very quickly, those of you who are regulars will know that we are big fans of B1G1 and want to help make the world a better place. So through B1G1, we always choose a project somewhere in the world to make the world a better place. And for each and every one that attends any of our live sessions during the course of this month, then we make a contribution on your behalf. Our chosen project for the month of September is over in Siem Reap, where people struggle to get to schools. As a thank you for being here, for each and every one of you here, we will make a bicycle available for a day to somebody to help them get education to get to school. So thank you for being here live. A couple of other quick things I will talk about more at the end, but we have recently launched the cart to get tickets for our Value 2023 conference. That's a 3-day online conference all about value pricing. So if this is the year you want to start getting to grips with value pricing, then make sure you grab a ticket. You can use your smartphone to grab the QR code. There's a coupon code that gets you 75% off. Tickets are just $35 for 3 days of training. I'll come back to that later. So don't worry if you miss that QR code. Also, my team will put the link, Sarah will put the link and the QR code into the chat box. And this is my first of 3 live streams this week. We do have 2 more. We have another special guest tomorrow. And then on Thursday, Emily and I will be talking about how you can use ChatGPT for marketing. That's Thursday. Again, I will remind you of those at the end. Let's just do a few final say hellos to Cruise Crazy. Hi there. Thank you, David, for helping with the question. Philip's here from South Africa, who's new-ish. Hi there, Philip. And Jenga is here from New York. Okay, so we have a special guest for today. It's not the first time he's been here. He was with me, I think, a year ago. I think it was about October, November last year. The feedback was amazing, as I knew it would be, and asked if I could bring him back. It is the amazing Peter Thompson, one of my heroes, mentors. I've learned so much from Peter over the years. If you missed the session a year ago, it is on my YouTube channel. I do recommend you check that out. But Peter, I've known for many, many years, and I've learned so much. I wouldn't be here today doing this sort of stuff without the help of Peter. So let's bring him on. Hi there, Peter. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Thank you for asking, Mark. And I tell you what, I better be good whatever I'm talking about today after that type of introduction.
and where are you in the world, Peter, right now? Are you back in the UK?
I am in a place that sounds like a disease, which is Long Itchington. And so I am living in the UK. I am just south of Leamington and Warwick. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, having a ball, actually. Life is very good indeed.
Awesome. Because you have a place in Spain as well. You spend a lot of time there, which I need to visit again sometime.
Indeed you do.
Now, we've got loads of stuff that we could talk about today. And I think a lot of what we'll talk about is probably this whole area of pricing, which is an area we can both go really deep on that. But I came across you years ago, and I mentioned one of my heroes, one of my mentors. And I think the last time I was working with you I was part of your 12-month mentoring program, the product creation goldmine workbook. And I mean, this is well thumbed, as you can see. It's kind of falling to pieces just because I've used it as a research resource over and over again. And it was fascinating going through it just now because it was actually 2012. Wow, extraordinary. It was, 11 years ago. It doesn't feel that long. And that was for me a very, a time of my life I remember a lot because I was just getting into this product creation stuff and writing books and ebooks and courses and so on. And I remember working through as one of as part of that mentoring program that had a huge impact on me. And I know we talk about with marketing about content being so important that we have to create content. People who follow me regularly will know I talk about content marketing. But one of the things I know you talk about a lot is how, when we're creating content, titles are so critically important. So let's start with that, Peter. Let's talk about why are titles so important when we're creating stuff?
Well, I think that if somebody can read that title and immediately know it's for them, so rather than thinking with a sort of frown on their face, is this for me? They're thinking, oh, this is for me. Then wouldn't that be a much better process to put our content out in the marketplace, whether it was a free report, whether it was a book, and I love books for marketing, by the way, whether or not it was a webinar or it was a seminar or whatever it is, has got to have a great title. And I've got a number of ideas for how we put titles together. One of the mistakes I see sometimes people make is they try and make the title too short. And there's a way to do that as well, which we'll talk about. And I've used great long titles. In fact, one of my most successful titles, Mark, was one years and years ago, maybe 25 years ago. And it had 30 words in the title, which breaks all the rules. And it was this. It was The 7 Big Mistakes Business Owners Unwittingly Make, costing them a fortune in lost turnover, lost profits, and what's even worse, lost personal cash, and how to avoid them. Right, massive, massive title. And I think we pulled something like, I don't know, a couple of thousand leads from that. I remember Brian Tracy, who a lot of people know, sent it down his list. And we had over 1,200 leads just from Brian's list alone with that title. And the reason it worked was it hit the 3 buttons I think titles sometimes need to hit, particularly with content titles, which was it told you who it was for, it told you what the problem was, and it told you there was a solution. So it was person, problem, possible solution. And I think if we can get those 3 into that content title, then that's really powerful. And there was one word I put in there, which I think is really important. When I was doing some work with one of the big insurance companies in the UK, its sales director said to me, Peter, I am fed up to the back teeth of people sending me information, telling me I don't know how to do my job. Right. And so this is a major problem when we market in such a way that we're really saying to somebody, you're no good at what you do. I am, and I'll show you what to do. Not very good. And so one of the ways to get around that is to slip this little word into the title, which is unwittingly. Then it becomes less accusatory. And we're really talking about other people, not directly to the reader, which is one way of doing that. So, but I've done a lot of stuff over the years on titles. And in fact, and I was going to give this away to everybody today, is I've created this little report called Magnetic Titles. And I go through 17 different types of title that you can use for your webinars, for your books, for your reports, free reports, etc. So if I can, Mark, I'd like to give you just a couple of examples out of this, because I think that would be really useful for people. Yeah?
Yeah, so please do.
Do you remember the name E. Haldeman Julius? Do you remember that name at all?
I don't, Peter, no.
Okay, E. Haldeman Julius was a guy, his title of one of his books was My First 100 Million Books. How about that for a title, right? Because this guy sold millions of books at 5 cents a piece. And he put columns and columns of the books in the newspaper. And the one thing he found was this, because he tested everything, because he was a great marketer, all great marketers test, that a how-to title in those days, maybe true today, would double or quadruple his book sales. And if a book wasn't working, he knew it was only the title that would make it work, because there was no other detail. So he would bring the book back into his hospital, retitle it, put it back out there, and see what would change. So a how-to title is a classic title to use. So how to, and that how to can either be away or towards. So how to avoid the problem of this, or how to capitalize on this opportunity. So how to is a cracker. Another one is a curiosity title, and that's one that starts with why. So here's a classic from Alan and Barbara Peace: Why Men Don't Listen and Women Can't Read Maps. That why immediately is magnetic because it drags you in, because you're thinking, oh, I wonder why that is. So that's a really powerful one. There's a command title. So for example, think and grow rich. Because those are positioned in first person imperative, think, right, then it becomes a command rather than a benefit if it was thinks. So that's an absolute cracker. Number titles work well. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective, whatever it might be. And one of my favorites, and this is a really unusual word, is the paraprosdokian title. Mark, do you know what the word paraprosdokian means?
I actually do not. No.
Okay, so paraprosdokian is an expression with a surprise ending. So we give you an example. Where there's a will, I'd like to be in it. Right? Yeah. Or history doesn't tell you who was right, only who was left. Right. So those expressions are paraprosdokian. In other words, they have a surprise ending. So
what you expect.
Lovely, aren't they? And if you search online, not now, but if you search online, you'll find hundreds of examples of paraprosdokians, just how it sounds, P-A-R-A, paraprosdokian, with a K in it. So, for example, the 4-hour work week. See, 4 hours a week doesn't go together really, does it? So it's got that nice kicker in the back end. And very common these days is 3 words, with one of those words being a verb. Classic Simon Sinek, start with why. Leaders eat last. So 3 words with a verb, very engaging. And the rhythm of 3 works really well indeed. So there's just a short ideas on titles. But titles are critical. They are really the headline of your marketing piece. And unfortunately, Ted Nicholas taught me this. A lot of people write good copy, but they spend just a few seconds on the headline. And Ted said to me years ago, sadly, we've lost him just a few years ago, 75% of the buying decision, not the level of interest, 75% of the buying decision is made at the headline. And so headlines are really important. And the headline, there's a 2-word headline, magnetic titles. So because it's got the word magnetic, it indicates what this is clearly, isn't it? It's magnetic titles. It's titles that attract people, because magnetism is attracting. So that's the whole idea. It's very important to have really great titles that engage people.
Yeah. So Peter, let's just take a step back a second, because we've kind of jumped in at titles, which is probably the most important part of content.
Yeah.
Why we have people here who are running accounting firms, bookkeeping firms. Why, and they all want to, I guess they want to grow their firms and make more money. Why is content for accounting firms so critically important when it comes to marketing and growing their firm?
It's how do you separate yourself from, and I'll use it correctly, this word, although it's usually not used correctly, the plethora of other accountancy firms out there, right? And people seem to use the word plethora as though it means abundance, and it doesn't. It means unnecessary abundance. So there's a load of people out there. How do you separate yourself? How do you position yourself as the natural, logical, and emotional choice for your ideal client? Because you don't want to attract everybody. So how do you start to attract the right people? Well, what you do is you change the conversation in your head. Instead of thinking of them selecting you, you start selecting them. So you select them by the title of the content that you put out there, because you identify exactly who they are. You identify the biggest problem they've got. And one of my expressions I'm using all the time these days, Mark, is if you want a bigger pay package, you better solve a bigger problem. Right? So you establish what's that biggest problem they've got, and you start to talk to that with your content, whether it's a report, book, webinar, seminar, whatever it might be. So this starts to separate you from people, and you become known as the expert in that narrow piece. And of course, the tighter the niche, the higher the price. I mean, that's worked throughout history, hasn't it? You know, the tighter the niche, the higher the price. That's the way it works. So you select who you want. And imagine that you had a client, and I know you'll translate this into meaning for accountants and bookkeepers, but let's imagine that somebody had a backache, right, and you wanted to attract them, you could put out a 2-word title. It said backache with a question mark. And because they've got a backache, they'll stop and read it. If they haven't got a backache, they won't stop and read it. I mean, it couldn't be much clearer than that, really.
Yeah, and one of the things you said, which is so important earlier on, I just want to pick up on, is you talked about targeting the right sort of clients, just the clients you want. And one of the things I see in the accounting profession, not necessarily the people that are watching right now, but one of the mistakes that I made this with my own sole practitioner accounting firm way back when I started in '96. A lot of accountants think that to grow our firms, we want to get as many clients as possible. Anybody who's breathing, we can take on as a client. Why is that thinking so wrong?
Well, because, and I was taught this by Roy H. Williams, the Wizard of Ads, right? And I've interviewed 172 people for one of my programs over the years. And this is number one, absolutely number one out of all of those. And he taught me this. He said, there's a major difference between the relational client and the transactional customer. The relational client treats the supplier, in this case, the accountant, as the expert, and price becomes a factor, not the factor. Whereas the transactional customer is their own expert. And basically, they tend to play people off one another, beating them down on the price till they buy it at the possible lowest level. And the only way to upset these people is once they've bought something is to tell them they could have bought it for £10 or $10 less down the road, and they're really upset because it's all a transactional. Now, I don't want to attract transactional customers. I like to deal with, and I know you do, and I know accountants that I know do, want to deal with the relational client, the people who stay, say, and pay. They stay for a long time. They say great things about you. They pay their bills on time and gladly. Now, we don't rip these people off. We charge appropriate level fees. So we are rightfully, richly, regularly rewarded. That was a load of ours, wasn't it? For the major difference we make to their lives. Why? Because we don't charge for time. We can call it that if we want to, but we don't really charge for time. We charge for value. And in fact, I know we'll get into it. There's an even higher level of that which we can talk about.
Yeah. Okay. So Peter, we talked a bit about content and titles, and I don't know, is now a good time to talk about, you talked about that 30-odd word title you had, and that was a great title. But you've got a new piece of content, a new book, and that's a one-word title.
It is. Here it is. Here it is. And it's called Paid. And the reason I went for this one-word title was I started, as I always do on titles, thinking what I'm trying to achieve with the book and all the rest of it. And I'd got How to Get Paid because I was thinking of a how-to title. And then part of my thinking was, I think I could make that punchier. And I was going to call it Get Paid. And in fact, we use that ambiguous statement all of the time when I'm talking to people. And I go, you're going to get paid, meaning you're going to get paid, but I also mean you're going to get the paid book. So I think because I'd played with it so much, and David, my son, who does all the designs for us, came up with this design, I thought a one-word title would just do it. And then, and this is another idea for your content, is to then add to the impact, the magnetism of the title by having a really good strapline. So underneath, I'd got reveals, the 10 secrets for being richly rewarded for the value you deliver, because I'm all about delivering value. And then we needed to say, well, who is this for? And so we didn't try and put it in the title, but we put it with a testimonial on the cover. So a friend and client of mine said, Daryl, a must read for anyone who charges fees, because that is the people that we help particularly, is anybody who charges fees. We can show them through Paid how to get paid more for the value they delivered. Now, Mark, I could spend the next 3 hours, I know we go past the hour, talking about this, but I'll stop there for that moment if you like. Yeah.
Okay. So let's, we'll come back to that later because I know you've got a special that gift as well later, so we'll come back to that later and your offer. Let's talk. So we've talked about content marketing and creating titles, but let's now get into the topic of really that book, which is pricing. And one of the things, Peter, that I find probably one of the most common questions that I get from people is, and it's usually because most accountants and bookkeepers are working crazy long hours, struggling to make ends meet because their pricing's wrong. They know they're too cheap, but their big question is, Mark, how do I raise my prices for my clients. And there's this big fear of losing clients if they do that.
Indeed.
So how do we do it?
Right. Okay. So we've obviously got current clients and we've got new clients. So if we're marketing, which we should be all of the time, however, in a small way, then we can always be testing. And that's what great marketers do. They can test different prices and different structures for new clients. So that's relatively simple. And I've got some ideas on that. But I have this problem as well, Mark. People that are my clients will say, how do I raise my fees with my current clients? And I say, well, this is it. You can't. So don't do it that way, because you can't go back to somebody you've been doing great business with for years and years and years at X price and say, oh, by the way, I thought I'd let you know it's 2X, because they're not going to be happy and they're probably going to leave. And that's not very relational. So what you do is you sit down and you create two different levels of service. You've got your current level of service, which we'll call, for the sake of a word, standard, and you decide to create a deluxe version. Now, I've been deluxing. I've been in business now for 51 years. I know it doesn't look at all possible. It is 51 years, right? And when my first business was, I was a private investigator. Yes, I was a private dick. And we used to trace absconded debtors. And we traced, and the reason I was so successful, we're being asked to trace 4,000 people a month, was because I did it on a contingency basis. If we charged if we found them, and we didn't charge if we didn't, right? But we had a deluxe version where the debt was high enough for our clients, which was people like Cadbury's, Rothmans, British American Tobacco, Schweppes, which was separate then, Nestle, Mars, and lots of people in that type of industry. And we had a deluxe version, which was £25 win or lose, because the debt was high enough and they trusted me enough that if I couldn't find the low level and the debt was high enough, they would come back to me for that. So I've been deluxing for a long, long time. So what we do is this. We get a piece of paper, and I've got a template for this. And in fact, the template is in, surprise, surprise, the template for deluxing is in the paid book, is you decide which parts of your service your client gets at different levels. We're going to have 3 levels: standard, and for the sake of simple words, deluxe and double deluxe, right? And the pricing goes up accordingly. And so you sit down and you create this, what do they get at this level that adds value to them? You give it a good name, probably with a good strap line, and a new pricing structure. And the same with your double deluxe. And you test those in the marketplace with new clients. This is what happens. Everybody, and I mean everybody, comes back to me and they go, Peter, they say to me, Peter, everybody goes for the double deluxe or the deluxe. They don't go for the standard. Of course they do. People buy on value. They don't buy on price. This many people buy on price. The people we want buy on value. And once you know that you have a winning formula with your deluxe and double deluxe offerings, you then go back to your current clients and you say, over the last few months, years, whatever it happens to be, I've been developing a new service. It's called X, whatever it's called. The deluxe, you won't say it's called deluxe, you'll say it's called this, because you want to give it a transformational name, right? Something that indicates the benefits of the value that your client's going to get. And you introduce it to them and say, would they like to try this new service? And in doing so, you'd actually do it by explaining first the double deluxe, whatever name that is, then the deluxe compared to the current standard service that they're getting at the moment. And what happens then is you're not going for a price rise, you're going for a value rise. So you're thinking about your client and saying, what's the bigger problem I can solve? Because that's worth a bigger pay. And that's the way, Mark, that you actually deal with that. How do you raise prices for current happy clients?
Okay, I love the way that you explain that. Brilliant. So I know at this point we haven't had any questions from anybody, apart from, there is one question from David asked a question. He just said, how is Peter's new book, Paid, doing? I mean, we can do it later if you want, or you might want to answer it now while he's asked it.
It is absolutely wonderful. We've spent so much time, well, I didn't spend much time writing it. Somebody asked me the question actually the other day. They said to me, Peter, how long did you take to write it? They just had a copy and I'm speaking for them on something. And I said, well, actually, this is the correct answer. It took me 35 days to write because I have a system, right? And I can write 1,000 words a day. It took me 6 months to edit. and it took me 51 years to learn what to put the stuff in it. So that's really how long, and it's going really well. We only launched it 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, last Friday, and it's gone through the roof. And we have surprisingly, we have a deluxe version. And the take up from that, I have been amazed with. It's now, it's doing brilliantly. Thank you very much indeed for asking, David.
So I love the fact that you've got a book and a deluxe version of the book, which is...
You've got to have a deluxe version of everything, right?
Absolutely. I love the way they explain the three different choices, which is something I talk about, and I talk about the magic of three, and likewise I find all the time that most people choose the deluxe or the double deluxe. A question that people might be thinking is, because you kind of alluded to the pricing accordingly, and a question people always want the answer to is, so what should the price be? So have you got any guidelines, some thoughts on, if you've got a standard product with a price right now, what would you be looking at to go with the middle option, the deluxe and the double deluxe? Should it be 10% higher, 50% higher, double the price, 10 times the price? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Okay, I'll give you an example of it, and then this will lead us in. So when I was running the mentoring programs, as you know, I did probably 7.5 years. I ran 13 mentoring programs like this. And the standard membership was £500 a month. But the deluxe version, which was called TMTM, which was Take Me to Market, which is where people spent more time with me personally, was £2,500 a month, right? So you can see that's 5 times the price. Right. So it wants to be a high enough level up. And Mark, you and I have talked before that probably if you've got a double deluxe, then the price of the double deluxe and the gap between it and the deluxe is smaller than the gap between the deluxe and the standard. Yes. So it's really, I tell you how I work it out is this. You've heard me say before that you don't sell about the price. It's nothing to do with the price. It's about value. Right? So we don't charge for time, even though we might frame it that way. We're charging for value delivered. But there's another level, and there's always another level with everything. We're actually charging for the value of the value. And this is a concept I go into in great detail in the book Paid, is what's the value worth to the client? Right? So it's all very well talking about money, but money is bits of paper or numbers on a machine. But what does it mean? Does it mean the kids go through university? Does it mean a new home somewhere else? Does it mean a different car or a feeling of security? Is it more in the pension plan and investment? What is it? Does it mean looking after an aged parent? I mean, what are you going to do with the money? That's the value of the value. And so when you start to think that through and say, here's my expression for this, what is my cascading impact in the world? It isn't just what I do for my client directly. How does that change their family life? How does it change their people's lives in their business? How does it change the cascading effect into their families? How does it change our world, right? And when you start to think about that and the difference we really make with what we do, then you start to say, am I going to swap one day of my irreplaceable life for tuppence? No way. I'm charging for the value.
Yeah. And what was going through my head at that point in time is I often say that the money, it can be an approximation for value, but that isn't value because every client's different. And often I talk about how to price, for example, tax planning work, where if you could save somebody, let's say 50,000 in tax through some tax planning, we can use that as the basis of value, but that isn't the value because 50,000 will differ from person to person. So if you've got one client who's probably as well off as let's say Sir Richard Branson, saving 50 grand of tax isn't really going to change their life. No. But if you've got a business owner that's struggling, they've got huge amounts of debt, they're about to lose their home because they can't meet the mortgage repayments, and 50 grand of tax savings, well, that could be life-changing.
Absolutely. Yes, I have the same example. I say we could go out in the streets and find somebody and give them £10, it would change their life. We could give it to somebody else that wouldn't even notice it fly by. Similarly, we could go out somewhere else and give somebody £1 million and it wouldn't change their life. different amounts mean different things to different people at different times in their lives. And it's having what I call, you have a different word for it, I think, I call it price pliability. And it's realizing that what we do, can I just give you an example of that, Mark?
Yeah, please do, Peter. Yeah.
You talk about the taxing. Let's say, for example, we give somebody a piece of advice as an accountant to or a bookkeeper to change their profits. And because of our piece of advice, not the time we spent saying it, but the piece of advice, they make £10,000 more or $10,000. Would it be fair we charge them 10%? Sounds fair, right? So we get a thousand for the 10,000, right? But let's say we spend exactly the same amount of time with another client and we show them an idea, they make 100,000. Would it be still right that we got 10%, i.e. 10,000? The answer is yes, of course. But what about with the third client? We made them £1 million extra, but we're still on 10%. We made 100,000 as our fee. Would that be fair? Yes, it would. I remember a client of mine, I showed them a piece of marketing. They're a big business. They did this marketing I suggested. The first lead, I had the testimonial for this, the first lead they got in, they picked up an order from it, and the order was for £1 million off the first piece of that marketing. I mean, they were happy with me, as you might imagine. I wasn't on a percentage, it was fee-based stuff, but it was good fees. They were delighted. You know, it's got nothing to do with the time we spend. It's the impact we have, and often the cascading impact we have. That's my take on it, Mark.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example, and it's something that it's the heart of value pricing. And I find that very often, particularly in the accounting profession, we're so rooted in time and costs, and have to think about, well, how long will it take to do the work, which is completely irrelevant when we're thinking about value pricing.
Yes, I was very careful not to get on my horse there and get into a rant. So I thought I'd get off quickly.
Okay. Yeah, I have to be careful as well, because I sometimes make the mistake of saying that accountants should ditch the timesheets. But I know many are very protective about their timesheets. Is their security blanket. So if people want to keep the timesheets, that's fine.
Yeah. I think one of the other things we were going to chat about, possibly, you may have already been coming in this way, was so when these ugly price objections actually happen, what do we do and how do we stop it happening? Do you want me to talk to that?
I would love to, Peter, because I talk a lot about putting prices up. And another thing that accountants, bookkeepers worry about is that those objections, that reaction of, wow, that's expensive, I can't afford that, whatever. So I think it's something that the profession struggles with and certainly hates price. I hated, in my accounting firm many years ago, I hated price objections because I just didn't know how to deal with them. And I think that the starting point of this, Peter, is we need to actually understand, first of all, what are the reasons behind price objections? Why do we get them? So perhaps that's a place to start.
Excellent stuff. Okay, so I've got some thoughts on here. And, one thing I didn't say at the start of our conversation, and I normally say it right at the start, but I was so enthused to get going, was I don't have all the answers. Yeah, I've been in business a long time. I've had some stunning successes, fantastic failures, learned from both. But I still know I've got to be a lifelong learner because it's the only way to be. I learn new stuff every day. So my take on it is that firstly, we've got to select the client. Because when we're dealing with the open quotes wrong client, then we can be getting into the realm of price objections. So it's deciding whether or not we're going to deal with the transactional customer or we're going to deal with the relational client. If we're going to deal with the relational client, then immediately we know that price is a factor, not the factor. And they are looking to us to be the expert. Therefore, we must walk, talk, act, speak, do as experts do, and we will be treated in that way. I remember a young man years and years ago, 20, 30 years ago, I was running a training course for a company, quite a few salespeople, and he came to me and he said, Peter, I wonder if you can help me. I want to become the sales manager. What do I do? I said, well, it's very simple. I said, walk like a sales manager, talk like a sales manager, dress like a sales manager, and do what sales managers do. And finally, somebody's going to say to you, well, I think they should make him the sales manager. And surprise, surprise, exactly what happened. So firstly, we've got to decide who we are to that client and who they are to us. And we want it to be relational. I go into a lot more detail, obviously, with paid, as you can imagine. That's the first thing. Secondly, in my opinion, most price objections are created by what we don't say early in the conversation rather than what we do say at the point of saying the price with a caveat in a moment. So it's how we set it up. Here's why. I remember meeting and interviewing Professor Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, Science and Practice, etc. And there was a word that he used a lot that I'd realized resonated with me so strongly. Two words. One, and I mentioned this to him, one word was before and the other word was then. And I got the feeling in my mind, because of those two words, that it was before there and there was then there. Therefore, there was a line in this conversation of what was taking place. And I asked him about it and he agreed this is what it was. But I'd also come up with this expression. I might try and say this quickly for fun and see if we can get it right. Okay. It's what you say before you say what you mean to say that makes the difference. And it's also what you do before you do what you mean to do that makes the difference. So if we put the two together, it's what you say and do before you say and do what you really mean to say and do that really makes the difference. Or in other words, it's how you create the climate in which Cialdini's words, persuasion, in my words, ethical persuasion takes place, but it's also how you position your fees before you say them. So we must be thinking through the financial thinking of the person we're speaking to. Here's my expression for it. Without contrast, everything sounds expensive or cheap. And the challenge is you don't know which it is because we don't probably know enough the financial thinking of the person we're talking to. Therefore, we must take control of that financial thinking. So when we're talking, before we talk about whatever fee, standard, deluxe, double deluxe we're going to be talking about, we have to contrast that first. Now, we can contrast it to a number of things. We can contrast it to the value and the value of the value. We can contrast it to a different way of finding out what it is that we are going to share with them or the service that we're going to provide. We can contrast it to their time and the fact that we're going to be saving time, and the value of that time is contrasted to the fee to save them that time. It's always about the contrast. Let me give you an example of this. I was dealing with a big insurance company and I was talking to them about taking one of my online programs and physical programs and redoing it and personalizing it for them. It was just 10 of the 36 modules of one of my programs. And I was talking to the national sales manager. And I said this to him. I said, so you've got 300 salespeople? And he said, yes. And I said, what do you think you're losing per salesperson per month for whatever reason? And he hesitated. So I said, is it 10,000 a month, 1,000 a month, a couple of thousand a month? He said, oh, at least 2,000 a month. I said, okay. And how long has that been going on for? You know, is it a load years, 10 years, 5, 1 year, 2 years? He said, well, at least 2 years. I said, let's see if we can work out what that means. So you've got 300 salespeople losing £2,000 a month. That's £600,000 a month. Multiplied by 12 is 7.2 million. Multiplied by 2 years is £14.4 million. He turned around and said, I didn't realize. I said, now, is it that you earn commission? Is it that you missed the commission on this? He went, yes. I said, well, I've got some good news. It isn't going to cost 14.4 million to solve it. That conversation set up my fee to create that program for them for £250,000. Another insurance company saw it, got 100 salespeople, wanted a 7-module version at £125,000. It's all about contrast. It's what we say before we say what we mean to say. So number one, pick the right type of clients to deal with. Number two, be absolutely certain about what we're saying to bring it through in the right place. And that making certain that we never, ever use any figure before we contrast. Add to that, the last point of the whole idea is, this is a couple of mindsets for me. Number one, let's learn how to sell, stop selling, and allow people to buy. Now, that is so quick and easy to say, but when we get it at a visceral level, life changes. Everything in business becomes so much easier. Learn how to sell. We need to understand the process, but stop selling and allow people to buy. And I think that it just makes such a difference with the way that we are with people. And I think when we blend all of those ideas together, and you probably gather I could talk for hours about this subject, then I think that's certainly a number of ideas that we can use in order to, let's not say eradicate, but at least minimize these ugly price objections, at least raising their ugly head. We stop them raising it before they even start.
That's brilliant, Peter. And there's a few people here that are probably smiling because they've heard that expression before. Because I often quote you and tell the story of when you first explained to me. It will have been back in 2012 when I said I can't sell, and you said don't sell, allow people to buy. So when I teach accountants about how to sell business advisory services, I use exactly what you taught me, and it had such a huge impact on me back then. Because I was always thinking I have to do the clever closers and the stuff that actually isn't important.
It isn't indeed. It isn't.
Yeah.
Could I just add one little bit on there, just for timing?
Yeah.
So make it clear. There's 4 timings for handling so-called price objections, and they're these: before, now, later, never. For me, it's better to handle it before it even raises its head, right? Because when somebody raises an objection, which is usually a statement, by the way, they don't ask questions, they make a statement. They mean to ask a question, but they don't know how to ask it, so they make a statement like, that's expensive, right? They don't mean that. They mean something totally different, but, more detail another day. So we try and handle it before, so they don't dig a hole, climb in, cover themselves over, and you've got to get them out before you can even talk to them. Other than that, handle it immediately. Because if you say to somebody, I'll come back to that, they have that objection in their mind, and they've just put on a pair of dark glasses, and they can't hear what you're saying. That was a nice mixed metaphor. They've put on dark glasses and can't hear what you're saying, which you can occasionally leave it, but be careful, really careful. And some objections are so spurious you can smile your way through them and ignore them. But that's another idea altogether. Because, Mark, and this is how it really works, the selling, if it's selling happens, takes place in the gathering stage, not in the presenting. And people think that presenting is selling. No, presenting is confirmation of what you've already said in the gathering stage in response to what people said to you is the right thing that you're going to do. Anyway, another week's conversation.
Yeah, so we could talk about that on a separate session, all about consultative selling and asking the right questions, which I think actually, Peter, I think you did quite a bit of that when we last did a session together back end of last year. So if anybody wants to find out more about that, go to the YouTube channel and look for the last interview with Peter.
Indeed.
I might even ask my team to put the link in the comments box afterwards at some point if they can dig out the link to our last conversation. Okay, there's some lovely comments coming in, by the way. Patricia said, great. Michelle Evans says, this is such valuable training.
Excellent, thank you.
And I have got a few questions coming in now from other people, so I might go to a few of those soon. Are there anything else you want to talk about in terms of price objections? Any other final points on strategies for dealing with them?
Yes.
We move on. Yeah.
There's more in
it. Yeah. And one of that links to one of the questions from earlier. If I can just find it, Shiraz said, "How can we buy this book?" So let's answer that one.
Thank you, Shiraz. That is the question I've been waiting for all day long. Right. So here we go. Right. So paid. This is the softback version. So paid, and I'm going to switch my things now, Mark, if I may, to slides. So Mark taught me how to do this. So I got an eCam and I started to do this thing, which I think is just fantastic. But I need to swap through a few slides first, so I'm in the right place because I've got some other stuff there. So if I come back to me first, and then I move these slides on a bit, let me get this out of the way. Got to make sure we press the right buttons here. Okay, so let me just move on. Okay, so here we go. So paid comes, so if I go back to slides, there we are. So paid comes with a lot of bonuses as well. So firstly, on the price on the back, it says value priceless, and then the price is simply $19.99 plus $24.99 in dollars, or not plus, or $24.99 in dollars. But what I've done is I've put together some extras to make this be really good for you. So firstly, there is a template pack. And in the template, because there's a lot of templates within here, then I've also put this template pack that you can download. So for example, we talked about deluxing. One of the things we talked about is having client conversations. So what I've created is a client conversation document, which I would urge you to copy, download it, make your version of it. And I think it's just fantastic. It's how you take control of a conversation. There's another document in there called WAM, which is how you keep on track to all of your goals. So I looked at that and I said, does it have a value? Well, who knows? I said value thousands. Who knows what the value is? You have to put a value on yourself. But there's a couple of the documents. There's the WAM document on the left, and there's the client conversation document. So you've got that as well. There's also, I've done this idea of a report called the 4 Golden Questions of Business Growth, which I'm sure you know those questions because you're part of Mark's gang, I should say. And so what I've done, I've collected over the years this many. 162 ways to get more clients, 122 average order value, 21 ways average order frequency, 50 ways to increase retention. That's all gone in there. Again, I have no idea of the value. I put that. And here's another one. If I come back to me for a moment, press me too. There we go. I'm back there. There is another book that I wrote called How to Write a Book for Your Business in Just 10 Weeks or Even Less. Attracts clients, increases your reputation, and makes more money. So I also want to give you, if I come back to slides, I also want to give you a copy of this book. So you can have this for free as well. It's a download that goes with this. So there it is, value thousands. I just put thousands every time for the sake of trying to think of a number, because I've seen so many spurious numbers when it comes to these types of things. I just thought we'd have fun. So total value of that, who knows? But then I added something else, and it's this, is I'm running on the 6th of October a webinar called Paid Explained to go even deeper into the ideas of paid and answer any questions that you might have. So you also get a free place with that. So pricing is only $19.99. There's the address, but I will also give you a QR code. So there is the QR code or the address, www.thepaidbook.co.uk/yes, obviously. You can see the QR code. The website at the moment gets a lot of traffic, and sometimes it gets a little bit slow. Just one thing, and this is the thought for you. If you are in the States and you get the book directly from me and I post it to you, the postage is probably as much as the book. However, it is on Amazon, and in the book itself, there are links to go to get those extra templates. So you haven't missed out on that. So if you do buy it from Amazon, right, then you can get it in that way. There are various other things that you'll see. If you go to my site, then there's various other things, including the deluxe version. And the deluxe version of the book, I've got it somewhere, but you will see I've done a little video for you as well. So worth going to thepaidbook.co.uk with that. In fact, I tried to be clever and I made another slide. How about this then? I've learned how to do tickers. So I've got this ticker going as well, right? So it is thepaidbook.co.uk/yes. And if I come back to the slides, if you have any problem whatsoever on the slides, on the website, then you can always do this, is to my PA Rachel, who's worked with me for over 30 years. If you can contact her at success@peterthompson.com or rachel@peterthompson.com. So if you have any problems when you get there, if it's too slow, if it's not loading, whatever else might happen, then you can get all of those details there. So if I go back to that one, just to finalize that, that's that one there. The paid, you've already got that by now, /yes. So if we come back to me, and there it is. And there that one is as well. There you go, Mark. I think that's about all of it.
Awesome. I love all the fancy stuff. It's looking really good. I know the next thing I need to teach you now, as you said, I need to teach you how to do live streams and go live. So
I nearly did the launch, and then I thought I've got enough to think about. If I'm going out live to YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook, and I'm trying to do the captions and the comments coming in as well, the way you bring them beautifully online. I know I've seen it done, but I haven't mastered it, but I know you'll teach me.
And you nearly caught me out, because when you were showing your slides and then you said, right, can you go back to me? And I'm thinking, I can't do that, Peter. You've got the buttons, the scenes set. I was thinking, I don't. Anyway.
Absolutely right. And of course, it was you that put me into the idea of the Stream Deck. So I've got I don't know if you can see it there. Yeah, there's my Stream Deck there, which I think is wonderful. Thank you.
It is wonderful. And I know there's a few people watching now who love their Stream Deck that went and rushed to get one. I mean, Neil Criddle, for example, I know he loves his Stream Deck and probably uses it in better ways than I am. I just use it for a handful of things for live streams, but it's got so many possibilities for workflow. Anyway.
The other thing, Mark, so just to pop in for the final thing on this, is a number of my clients now, and I've already had the first three. One client's bought 100 copies because he's running a seminar, And so he's going to give it as a conference gift. And 2 other clients of mine have bought 10 each, saying they're going to give them to their clients because they know the ideas in paid will help their clients. And one of them happens to be an accountant, as it happens. There we go.
Cool. And you didn't mention, Peter, the best bit of the book. There's an amazing foreword.
Oh, hang on. Who's this geezer? Yes, there is a geezer. I've never called you geezer in my life before. How terrible of me. Yes, there is a wonderful foreword by this chap, Mark Wickersham, FCA, the most sought after profit improvement expert in the accounting community and author of many books, including Value Pricing for Accounting Professionals. There you go.
So it's worth buying the book just to read the foreword.
Just to read the foreword.
Okay, let's see if we can deal with a few questions. So I don't know their real name because it's Hermani Financial Solutions, but they said, what is the best impact way to differentiate your firm? Is it with pricing, content, or something else?
Right. I think there's a number of ways. Firstly, I think the best way would be to have absolute clarity on your ideal client and make sure that all of your marketing is focusing to attracting that person. And you really want, I believe this, is the ideal client. So you can create the ideal offering, which you can link to the ideal offer, right? So you want the ideal client, ideal offering and offer, different things, but offering and offer. So that way you are creating what's often called in the marketplace a niche or category of one or differentiation, call it whichever name you want, so that you become the expert in that area, right? Great advice.
I have a question from Lisa. Now, if you can't, I have a thought for Lisa with this question, so, but I'll ask it anyway in case you have any thoughts. Lisa says, as a bookkeeper, we don't have a large impact such as tax savings. So how do we put a value on that?
Marvelous. So having been the recipient of bookkeeping services over the years, having been in business this long, what it does for me, it gives me this. Number one, it saves my time. And if I could touch on this, I'll do it briefly, Mark, is when we are comparing the value of what we do to somebody else's time, we must make sure we're using the right value of their time in order to create the contrast. And what people tend to do is to value against the earnings of that person. No, wrong. Right, the earnings are what I call the output, right? The input is how much turnover must come into the business in order to create that level of earnings. That's what you contrast against, because that number, if it was a manufacturing company, it could be 20, 30 times bigger. If it was a consultancy, it might be 2 times bigger. But you're not cost against in cost, you're talking about out cost. So when you get that conversation right, then firstly, it's the value of somebody's time. The second thing that, Lisa, I think that you provide, and this is what I got from good bookkeepers and good accountants over life, is a great thing I think we're all looking for, which is peace of mind. I like to spend my time doing my stuff with my clients to the best I can do it. I don't want to be thinking or worrying or be concerned in any way about anything else in my business. I want to focus on my A tasks. And if you as my bookkeeper can give me and indicate that level of value you're going to deliver to me in the value of peace of mind, how do you even put a price on it? Well, you will, but you put it high.
Great answer. Thank you, Peter.
What's your answer, Mark?
Sorry?
What was your answer?
I was actually thinking a little bit different, actually, but your answer was better than mine. I was kind of thinking more about what can bookkeepers do different that becomes even more valuable. Like accountants can do tax planning and tax saving, which is saving tax is way more valuable than just filling in the tax return. And I think there's all sorts of ways that bookkeepers can create even more value for their clients. But I might go into that conversation another day, Lisa. Okay. I have some thoughts for you on that. But I've got a few more questions here. Linda Rolfe says, here's a good one. How do you respond to the premature, how much will this cost question? So I think what Linda's saying is if you get that early in the conversation, yes, and you're not ready to deal with price yet.
Indeed. I think you say, well, when I've understood, so this would be the way I heard it, when I've understood what it is you want to achieve, on the basis of where you are now, where you're trying to get to, and how by working together, you see I'm slipping this in, how by working together we can get you there more smoothly, more easily, and probably more profitably than you'd previously considered, then I'll be able to indicate the level of the investment you need to make in yourself. Because that's what we're talking about here, is whether or not you're investing in your business and yourself to get the goals that you want. Tell me, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing at the moment? Never leave it at the end with a statement. Always ask the next question.
Wonderful point. Thank you. Okay, I think we've got time for one more quick question. Also, Patricia did say, please post the URL for the paid book again. So Sarah's going to do that, I think. Sarah will put the link into the chat box on LinkedIn and all the other places. So don't worry, you'll get that, Patricia. We'll share that. So last question, I think, before we wrap up, is Farron said, Peter, did you comment regards the collector's edition versus the deluxe edition versus the standard on Amazon? I had to step away a minute.
Right. Okay. So the collector's edition with all its extras, really you need to get from me. You can get part of the collector's edition, which is the A4 hardback from Amazon. But unless I know you've got the collector's edition from me, a number of the bonuses, especially the high value bonuses, only come with that. So even if you're in the States, it's probably worth paying the extra postage to get those. If you find out that it isn't, as always, everything I do is completely risk-free. You just come back and say, actually, Peter, it worked better for me if I got it from Amazon. Not a problem at all.
Awesome. And the lovely Lisa, she says, just got the book. Thanks, Peter.
I like to hear it. I like to hear it. You've made the rest of my day. I can go and have another cup of tea.
Yep. And Lisa's a wonderful person who doesn't miss any of these live streams. She's always here. So Lisa, thank you for supporting us. As is Linda, never misses one either. She always shows up live.
Thank you, Linda.
Unfortunately, Peter, I think we've pretty much got to the end of our time together. I have a couple of announcements to say to people, like what's coming up next in the live stream. But Peter, it's been extraordinary as ever. And I know that there's been some wonderful comments. What I would love to know, if people could put in the chat box, is let me know wherever you are, what social media platform. Just put in the comments, what's the number one thing that you've learned from Peter today? What's the key thing? And then I'll share all that with Peter. What's the most valuable point that you've learned? That will be really great feedback for us. So please put that in the comments box. Yes, go and get your copy of Paid. We will put the link in the description afterwards. So Sarah's just put, we'll add the link to the book in the description afterwards, if that's okay. Yeah, I think, Peter, you sent a different link to Sarah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I was checking links today, so I asked Rachel, which is the absolute link, and we checked the QR code and all the rest of it. So it is absolutely thepaidbook.co.uk/yes.
Yeah, we'll get that in the description.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the great questions. And I always enjoy our sessions together. It's just brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We'll catch up again sometime soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, so just a few quick things. We have 2 minutes left. A couple of quick things just to let you know. If you've got some value from this, if you enjoyed it, please just click the like button, the thumbs up, whatever. And that would be awesome. Thank you for supporting us with these events. Make sure you put into the comments what's the best thing that you've learned. I can see a few people have done that already, which is awesome. I'm going to read those in a few minutes. And also, I said at the outset, we will be running very, very soon in the next few weeks on October the 3rd to the 5th, our 3-day value pricing conference. It's called Value 2023. And you can get a ticket right now for 75% off using the coupon code that's on the screen. I'll get Sarah to put it into the comments in the next few minutes. Or you can, if you've got your smartphone to hand, you can use that QR code on the screen. So that's our 3-day conference coming up, all about value pricing, of which Peter's shared some great thoughts. We'll go even deeper still over those 3 days. And then what else have we got coming up? We have tomorrow is our next live stream. My guest is Michael Palmer, talking about the power of automation systems for your business. So I'm looking forward to catching up with Michael again. That's tomorrow, same time as normal. And then on Thursday, On Thursday, Emily and I will be walking you through what are some of the best ways to use ChatGPT for growing your accounting firm, different things that we can do in the area of marketing to make marketing so much easier using AI, using ChatGPT. And finally, given that we have talked about pricing today, just in case you haven't got a couple of our ebooks, with the how-to title, which Peter says is one of the better titles. If you haven't yet got How to Price Bookkeeping ebook, then I will ask Sarah to put the link into the chat box for that. I wrote that a couple of years ago. I've had so much great feedback about that particular ebook. And if you also struggle with value pricing cleanup work, I also wrote a little while ago a book on how to price cleanup work. And again, there's the QR code, and I'll ask Sarah to put the links in the comments or in the description. So if you haven't got those two ebooks, then please feel free to grab those. Okay, thank you so much for coming along. We are just 1 minute over, so let's bring this to an end. I will play out with some music for a few minutes, gives me a chance just to read the comments, and I may see you again for the live stream this time tomorrow. Thank you for coming. Bye for now.
I wasted all my time, I wasted all my nights, I wasted it on someone who's indifferent. He didn't love me right, he told me I was blind, but I never really wanted to listen. You have been here since day one, seen my ups and downs, never left my side once, yeah, you stuck around. Who knew it was you? You have been here all along, you have always been the one, yeah, who knew it was you? You have always been the one, that's the truth. You have been here all along. I never saw the signs, he didn't treat me right, but I just couldn't let him go. You waited patiently, you waited for me, you showed me what it was to love. You have been here since day one, seen my ups and downs, never left my side once, yeah, you stuck around. Who knew it was you? You have been here all along, you have always been the one, yeah, who knew it was you? You have always been the one, that's the truth. You have been here all You have been here since day one. I never left my side once. You have been here all Who knew it was you? You have been here all along, you have always been the one, yeah, who knew it was you? You have always been the one, that's the truth.
Wonderful.
Hang on a second. Let me just make sure that ended.